Hello, and welcome back to this Fae Tactics series. Let's talk about that scroll I picked up. I kinda referred briefly to it at the end of the last video with mouse gestures, but remember how I said Magic Barrier reduced the amount of damage a character took by half, as a matter of fact? Well, that seems like a good addition for a character with a move that covers for allies. He can do it it can do it a little bit more safely now. Well, yep, we've got our first enemy leader here. I guess now's a good time to talk about the difference between leaders and normal characters, or I guess I could just call them Fae. Anyway, all three of the characters you start with count as leaders, which means they get traits, which you've seen before, they can equip scrolls, and also they are not knocked out as easily as normal characters. They have to be hit 3 times after being KO'd to be removed for good. But also, I just got 2 important abilities. I can now summon normal Fae characters myself. You pick them before the battle, except for this particular battle, of course. And they follow the same rules as everything we've been fighting so far. The Fae that you start with, as well as the spells that you start with, depend on which star you're born under. I believe that there's a particular star that gives you a salamander, and I think that's the best one because salamanders are pretty tough to get otherwise. But I'll go with the one that I've picked. It's not something that makes or breaks the game. Now spells are free to cast, sort of. They don't cost a turn, but they do have cooldowns, and you can only use one per full combat round. Also, enemies get access to these too. Well, enemy leaders do. And also, now that we can summon Fae ourselves, enemy Fae sometimes drop talismans that basically give us that kind of Fae as a character. So, for example, for every map after this one, I could choose to bring one of those little wind element melee Fae gremlins into the party. And that might not be a bad idea for reasons that I'll explain after the map. Also, you can select an enemy leader and you can see their spells just by hovering over them with the mouse. That's pretty nice. Also, enemy leaders tend to be sort of mini-boss characters with stronger abilities than normal Fae. And, at least at this point, stronger abilities than our characters get. But that's not a huge deal right now. And they're not full-fledged bosses. We'll see the difference when we get that far. Now, I want to especially avoid those melee gremlins right now, because we're not fighting just one enemy at a time anymore, really. If they get close and a couple of ranged characters also get close, we're going to start eating some combo attacks, and we can't really take those. As for the troll leader, its main feature is being tough, kind of. It gains some magic barrier for itself if it spends its turn without doing anything. It can also give up magic barrier to other characters, which we've seen before. And this is nice. We're finally able to crit those gremlins with an element that counters them. That's pretty nice. And it also has a reaction ability, the troll does, I mean. It can sometimes defend, which greatly reduces the damage that's dealt to it. But reaction abilities don't work against back attacks, so we're going to take advantage of that. In fact, that's an important thing to do against pretty much every enemy leader and boss, because enemy reactions can be pretty strong. Ooh, and that's just the sort of thing I was talking about. Also, pretty unlucky to get hit by a blind enemy. That's an 80% accuracy hit. Yeah. Speaking of which, another thing that's added... Some Fae, like that squirrel there, can cause curses. We've seen burn before. And blind is another one. And this is also going to be important, not just because they can be debilitating, but also because cursing an enemy removes enchantment buffs. And there are some pretty powerful enchantments out there. Now, I think this is also a good time to explain that there's stat buffs that stick around for the entire battle, and then there's enchantments. And those are kind of... enchantments are specifically named. You can only have one enchantment at a time, but the effects are a fair bit more dramatic than the longer-term buffs. For example, the +7 max magic barrier is a battle-long buff, but one of the enchantments is Rage, which is a 40% attack boost, and I think 10 or 20% increased reaction success rate. So, in the future, it's a pretty good idea to consider the enchantments available to you when forming a team. They can have a pretty dramatic effect on how you do things. Cloak is another such enchantment. I don't use that one a whole lot, but it's a good one for saving allies that are in danger of being killed. Well, let's have our little bird kill someone again. Pretty good at that. Whenever there's water around, beware. That's one of the things that I actually appreciate about Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen. That has, it gives you some water units at the start of the game, and my first time I played that game, I think, what use is that? Pretty much all of the terrain in most of the maps is land. What I wasn't paying attention to was that pretty much every map had at least a couple of rivers in there, and there were some obnoxious spots that you could place water units to really get in the enemy's way and wreck some of their squads, because they'll just run right into them. Anyway. Enemy leaders are fairly good about using their spells. You've already seen one or two. But they don't really have any devastating ones just yet. Also, another thing to explain. You've seen Chain before, but I didn't really tell you about how Arcane Elements works. It's not strong against anything. It can't cause elemental crits the way they normally do. For example, wind attacking a water unit. However, instead, every third arcane attack is a crit. That's why I was kind of saving her third attack there, because if you get a chain attack on a forced arcane crit, you can remove a whole lot of enemy energy shield, like you saw back there. Also, Paichin, our little bird healer, is probably the tankiest member of our party right now because of all that energy shield. Its health is low, but as far as I know, there aren't any abilities that just ignore magic barrier and go right to health, although I'm sure the game might surprise me later. Well, I was thinking about where that gremlin could go exactly, and I think it can jump straight down if that little outcrop right below it is unoccupied. But I'm not going to let it do that. Also, putting your back to a wall, always nice. Back attacks are pretty nasty to deal with. Well, as much as I'd like to back attack this troll, it doesn't have any reaction abilities that can really hurt me, so I'm not going to worry too much. Also, this Gremlin Witch, as a water unit, it does have a healing ability, and its idle effect is to strengthen its assist power for more healing, but with a movement of 2 squares, it has a problem. It's a pretty serious problem, and I'll have to keep in mind it when I want to use it in the future. Oh, and Paichin reached level 5, which is the level where you earn your own reaction ability. This one recovers its own health and magic barrier, and that of nearby allies, so it's, once again, it's really tanky. And I'll need to actually remember that in the future, because it doesn't look like a tank, but, well, this is a video game. We can't go by that as an indicator of stuff. Anyway, it looks like we got an easy back attack. Now this leader gets automatic rage, which I've already talked about, when it goes below 50% health, but it attacked the least vulnerable member of our party, so yeah, too bad. Now, I mentioned that leaders take some extra hits to KO, but that doesn't matter for maps where defeating the leaders is the objective. If they're all KO'd, even if they haven't been fully knocked off the map, the map is over. Alright, so that was a whole lot of mechanics introduced at once, but we did alright. Also, we picked up a talisman for that wind gremlin, and that's going to be important because their assist is haste, which gives a unit +2 movement, which seems like it's going to be pretty useful for our movement challenged water witch there. Could make that thing a lot more viable. Also, extra movement is just pretty much always strong in these games. Now, we've seen that its attacks aren't too overwhelming, but being melee, we can probably stack them up quite a few times if we're careful about it, so there might be potential there. Also, having more elements available to us is always nice. Also, now that we've gotten a 5th trait point, things have opened up. It opens up another trait branch for us. And also, investing 5 points gives special effects. Putting it into special gives more assist power and thus more healing, but I'm going to stick it with defense to make our tank more tanky, and also a magic barrier aura, which means that Paichin just automatically restores 3 points of magic barrier to anything nearby at the start of the turn, I think. Or maybe on the start of Paichin's turn, I'm not sure. Defense Breaker. I haven't tried that one out yet. It might just reduce enemies' defense by 3 when it hits it, and defense is a fairly significant stat in this game. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I'd like to experiment more with it. Also, we got a new scroll. Let's take a look. -5 defense on hit. I think I'd like to give that to Peony for now, because she can use it to chain attack and reduce the defense of a whole lot of enemies in one move. So let's do that. Also, it says rank 1. Yeah, you can pick up scrolls multiple times. They are sometimes random drops, and doing that increases their rank and thus their effectiveness. Well, I'm going to do some grinding off screen. This is the point where you can do some free battles. And I'm doing this to collect a couple more monsters to increase my element diversity. I'm going to need it. And possibly another scroll or 2. Well, but before we end the video, let's see what the story has in store for us. Let's see. We don't start with any extra spells, but I'm sure we'll pick up some more as we go. I didn't really get a huge need to use them, but that's more or less because I forgot. I'd been playing so many tutorial levels that I kinda got used to not having those, but I'm sure they'll be important later. Well, let's get our bike fixed. Oh, we can't do that. Yeah, I guess, sophisticated parts are a little tough to get in a wasteland. Well, we've got our first story branch, then. The free battles do not interfere with that, to the best of my knowledge. I understand that there's at least a couple of quests that are time-sensitive, though. Also, I don't really expect to do any grinding after this first session, or at least I won't if I can avoid it. Well, we can fight the bandits, or just move on to a town that's not bothered. It looks like the bandit branch is going to be more interesting, yes. I assume that's what the ominous purple sword with the skull means. Well, I guess we'll see what that means next time. Later.